Happy New Year. Waiting for this to set up, but before I can see if I'm actually live, I'm hoping that I am live and that you're joining me for day 7 of Food Stories of Hope and Inspiration. Welcome. I hope that whatever way you celebrated New Year last Eve was in these crazy times as happy and memorable and wonderful as it could be. I'm wishing you all the very best. So yesterday I talked a little bit about my adapted New Year's Eve with my dad in an Italian restaurant and in a Greek restaurant. Now, traditionally on festive mornings like Christmas Day, New Year's Day, Easter Day, we would have an epic breakfast. An epic breakfast for the Dutch is a table laden with anything you can eat on or with bread. The Dutch have a love affair with bread, and I touch on that in my Discover Dutch Cuisine course, which I'm running again, I think, end of January onwards. But so what does that mean? You would have charcuterie, you would have cheeses, you would have smoked salmon, fresh juices, but most importantly, freshly baked bread and freshly baked rolls. I have been so spoiled growing up that the local bakeries are actually open on Christmas Day, Boxing Day, New Year's Day, and Easter. So you'd put your order in and you'd pick up your fresh rolls and your fresh pastries or cakes or flans or whatever you ordered on the day. So during this difficult time when I shared these days with Dad, I recreated a mini version of that epic breakfast table for 2. And it's moments like that that would bring us together. It would be beautifully laid out with festive napkins, seasonal table decorations, holly, pine if it was Christmas Day or New Year's Day, stole, or mostly known by the German name of Stollen to many of you, all part and parcel. So those few moments of time with Dad over food, we've always had a very difficult relationship, and sometimes I don't even know if I could call it a relationship. But those moments over food would momentarily bond and bring us together, just like Mum baking her oliebollen in February in yesterday's story. Because the generosity of food and laden tables is also the generosity of our time, the caring, sharing, nurturing. And I later realized how important that also was for Dad, and how he had a strong need to be looked after in that way. Pretty much, I guess, in his view, the whole traditional man goes to work, housewife at home, housewife provides, housewife cooks, feeds, nurtures. Now, sadly, over the years, my parents came to live separate lives in the same house, and over time, that also meant that they were cooking separately, even had their own separate fridges. And I realized later that Dad was probably very resentful of that in his own head and could not quite accept that. When Mum passed away, the last time I saw Dad before I came back to England was he said he was he said, so who's going to cook for me now? Remember, I've just told you, they've been living separate lives and cooking separately for many, many years. So it wasn't that she had still been cooking for her, but somehow in his head, the loss of his wife and my mum translated in, who's going to cook for me now? At the time, I didn't realize how that was a mental thing. I interpreted it as a practical thing. I'm a practical person. I mean, for F's sake, I'm a private chef. I know about cooking. I teach cooking. And I offered help. I offered him practical help. I said, Dad, I'm so happy to take out time with you and for you to help you become more self-sufficient with cooking, a few skills. He refused. He refused because it wasn't about the practicality. I mean, he wasn't a great cook, but it was his way of expressing the loss of his wife. My mum, who's going to cook for me now? But you're only ready to be helped to move on with whatever cooking challenge you think you have, be it practical or mental, even something that's holding you back when you're ready to take action. Remember the other day, action, reaction, reaction, action. It happens in our kitchens, it happens in our homes, it happens in our relationships when we share or do not share food. So let's move on a few years. And I got a call from my godfather, Dad's brother, my uncle, that Dad had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And he had months to live, not years, months. Now, in context, at the time, I was a struggling startup in my fledgling chefing business, but I'd had an accident. I had multiple fractures in my foot and ankle. I'd literally been imprisoned, not being able to whatever because of operations, and I'd been in a cast, and I just got into a walking boot when I heard this news. So at the second appointment at my kinesiotherapist or whatever it's called here in England, I said, right, I need to go to my dad for his last birthday. And the therapist said, so where's your dad? I said, Belgium. So he looked at me and he says, well, I can't stop you, can I? I said, no, you can't. So I drove my first big proper trip in the car. I drove to Belgium for my dad's last birthday, and I managed to somehow miraculously organize a room in the hospital. They never do this. You can't just hire a room in a hospital, right? I managed to arrange a room where I could do what I can only call is a very, very Dutch style birthday celebration, where people end up sitting in a circle, chatting, drinking. Yes, there was booze in the hospital, as well as soft drinks, I hasten to add, but around a table laden with food, because food brings a sense of celebration. And I'll admit, there's nothing homemade in there, but it had lots of my dad's favorites. And it's bizarre but heartwarming to recreate memories like that and to adapt and connect with friends and family of Dad for his last birthday. And it is indeed the last food I shared with my dad. Because I got the dreaded call when I was just packing up here back in the UK in this very kitchen you see me now. I was just packing up for private chefing, tapas for 10 people, and I got the call saying he'd passed away. I would have been there 2 days later. I didn't get there. Yeah, I admit I broke down in tears, and it's the one booking I cancelled at the very literally last minute because I was overwhelmed at that moment, as you'll understand. The next day, I did share those tapas with, remember Millie's grandparents, the other side of the building? I shared those tapas with them, and I guess created yet another food memory for me and for them the next day. Adapt and connect through food. Create, recreate food memories, which is what we do every single day. I spoke to a friend of mine the other day, Martina in Germany. She's actually a member in this group. And she was spending a solo Christmas. But she decided that she was going to give herself the generosity and time to recreate one of her festive food memories. And that was Nudelsuppe, which is like consomme style soup with homemade little dumplings. And she'd have turkey for mains. She went through the whole motion. She went through the whole cooking the turkey and using all the bits and pieces to make her consomme. She'd rung her sister for the recipe, made the whole noodle thing. She made a few mistakes. Now she knows how to make the dumplings better next time. But she took time out to, even for Christmas by herself, to celebrate it and to recreate a food memory, which I think is wonderful. It's wonderful because if you do what you always do, you get what you always get. She never made anything like that, but she wanted to. She wanted to learn, and next time she'll do it better. And it tasted of home, just like Maggie did for my mother. It tasted of home. We learn, adapt, and reconnect with our own memories, be they from childhood or every memory we create through food every day for ourselves and our family. And I think we need to keep doing that, whichever way we can. Tomorrow is going to be a story about mussels. Not those, I haven't got any of those, but it's going to be a story about mussels. And I hope you will join me then. Have a wonderful New Year's Day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Love you.